Okay, so we are live. This is the Climate Wednesday, and we've had some delay getting this up and running, but we're really excited that after a lot of "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" we are live on this edition of Climate Wednesday. My name is Sheifumi Adebote, and I'm glad to moderate today's episode. Today's edition. As many of you may know, I host the Climate Talk podcast. So if you hear me say an episode, it's just trying to find a balance. But today we're talking about food security, agroecology particularly, and how it is a pathway to sustainable food system. And I've got with me someone who is in the right position to, share thoughts and experiences. She's worked a lot around food-related issues, from GMOs to writing, and I mean, she's a really one of the thought leaders I respect when it comes to food sovereignty and environmental advocacy. Joyce Ebibe Inwe. I may have missed your surname. Could you correct that, please? How do you call that?
Thank you, Shay. I'm really happy to be here. It's actually Joyce Ebebenwe.
Okay, Joyce Ebibe. So welcome. How would you love to introduce yourself before we start the conversation properly?
So like you've said, my name is Joyce Ebebenwe. I'm currently working with Health of Mother Earth Foundation on the campaign for agroecology and food sovereignty in Nigeria and in Africa at large.
Great. So let's start by talking about Health of Mother Earth Foundation. What exactly is it? I know a bit about it, but I imagine that hundreds of people following this conversation may not know and will be very interested to know about what you do at HOMEF, as you call it.
Well, HOMEF is a non-governmental organization. It's an ecological think tank and an advocacy organization. So we promote environmental and climate justice and food sovereignty in Nigeria and in Africa. So our work includes research as well as advocacy, and we try to form a bridge between policies and decisions that the governments make and what the actual needs at the grassroots are. So we engage a lot at the grassroots level, trying to kick against oppression of different sorts, be it in the food systems or in environmental issues. So that, in a nutshell, is what we do at HOMEF.
Great. And you mentioned that you are leading on the Agroecology co-project. What exactly? Could you say that one more time?
That's on promoting agroecology and on promoting food sovereignty. So,
Okay,
and
great.
the desk I work on is actually termed hunger politics, that attends to issues relating to our foods, our food systems. And then we ask the question, why are people hungry? Are Nigerians or Africans hungry because we don't produce enough food, or because there are other factors that prevent people from accessing that food? So those are some of the
Great.
things that we
We'll
work on.
do all of this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to it. But let's start from the basics. What is agroecology?
Well, agroecology is broad and all-encompassing when it comes to its importance in ensuring food security, or more importantly, food sovereignty. Agroecology is a scientific discipline, it's a set of practices, and it's also a social movement. So, as a scientific discipline, it studies the interrelationship of the diverse components of agroecosystems, and as a set of practices, it comprises of different farming practices that help to optimize and stabilize yields over time. Maybe, yeah, as we go on, we'll mention some of those practices. Then, as a social movement, agroecology recognizes and promotes the rights of farmers, of communities to decide by themselves what they grow and how they grow it. So, in a nutshell, agroecology is that system of agriculture that works more with nature than the industrial system, for example.
Great. That's really clear. Agriculture and ecology, agri for nature, as against with the industrial system. So that leads me to the next. I mean, just to build on that same question, I am wondering, how does this tie into the concept of sustainable agriculture? You know, we read a lot about no hunger, about farming, and within the framework of the SDGs. How does agroecology tie into the framework? I mean, into sustainable agriculture.
I didn't hear most of what you said, but I understand you're
I could
asking.
ask again. I'm just
Okay,
saying, how
great.
does
Please ask again.
agroecology tie into sustainable agriculture as a practice? It's been one of the things we've been pushing for within the framework of the SDGs. So how does agroecology tie into sustainable agriculture?
Okay, so agroecology connects to the SDGs. Actually, it contributes to the achievement of up to 10 of the 17 SDGs. Talk about zero hunger, talk about reduced inequalities, talk about reducing poverty, life on land, life below water. Can you hear me?
I lost you for a sec, but it's back now. So you were saying
Okay. Okay, yes. So I was saying that agroecology actually contributes to the achievement of a number of the SDGs, including zero
10, you
hunger,
say,
no
out of 7.
poverty, yeah, life on land, life on water, sustainable cities, and all of that. So agroecology actually ensures inclusivity. It promotes farmer participation, both in terms of policies relating to food production and also in terms of decision making as to what and how food is produced. Agroecology ensures or nurtures agroecosystems. So it's a farming system that, in addition to ensuring increased productivity, also nurtures the agroecosystems and protects it and preserves it for coming generations.
Mm. Great. So let's do a little bit of comparison here. If you talk about agriculture to the layman, the principles of
Yeah.
agriculture, simple as it is, would be that you plant, you wet, and then you harvest, and the process is complete. What are the principles for agroecology? Is it as simple as that, or is it a little bit complex?
Well, it is as simple and then it is as complex. Because I mean, with agroecology, you still plant, you still weed, and you will harvest as well. It is what goes on in the process of planting and weeding or preparing the plant to the time of harvesting. It's what makes up that period that makes up
I am afraid we seem to have lost Joy for a bit. Hopefully, in another few minutes, you'll be back. But if you're just joining us, this is the Climate Wednesday. I mean, it comes to you every Wednesday, and we've sort of, changed the style and the way we do things. It's no longer just tweet chats. We're still very active on Twitter, so please follow us on Twitter. It's at Climate Wednesday. We're also on every other platform. You could just search for Climate Wednesday, or you search for the International Climate Change Development Initiative, and then you can see about our works. You can also follow some of this very interesting conversation that we have with thought leaders around issues that have to do with environment, climate, and all other related issues. Let's see if we have Joyce back. Joyce, can you hear me? Great. I think we have you back, Joyce. But I mean, just before I go on with the series of questions, I want to mention to those who are following on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, that we're very happy to welcome your questions. Just put it up in the comment section and we'll be able to share with you. I mean, ask your questions to Joyce and see how well we can respond to some of those questions. So Joyce, let's get on with our conversation. If you can hear me, please let me know.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. So I was asking about the principles of agroecology. Is it as simple and basic as the principles of agriculture, where you just plant, nurture it, and then see that you can make your harvest and you're fine? Is that the same for agroecology?
Okay, so let me just go straight to what the principles of agroecology are, in addition to the principles that go with agriculture normally, because agroecology is a system of agriculture. So the comparison is actually between agroecology and the industrial model of agriculture, or what we may call modern agriculture. So for agroecology, one of the key principles is that it promotes diversity in farming. So, and it has to do with the kind of practices that it promotes, which includes mixed cropping, which includes crop rotation, which includes the use of cover crops, agroforestry, use of small animals on farm. So agroecology ensures and promotes a diversified farming system. And this diversity in crops and in nutritional content is, and as well as in soil diversity, is important not just for food security, but research has shown that diversity of agroecosystems is linked to the ability of such ecosystems to be resilient to even the impact of climate change. So that's one of the principles of agroecology, promoting diversity in ecosystems. Another key principle of agroecology is that it excludes synthetic or inorganic inputs. Generally, agroecology is it's not input intensive. It focuses rather on promoting soil health and soil fertility, as opposed to having as opposed
Go
to
on. Yeah.
having yeah as opposed to having introducing chemicals in terms of fertilizers or manure into the soil. So agroecology is it's less or no chemical intensive. Another principle of it is that it makes use of local animal or livestock varieties. Agroecology recognizes farmer knowledge. And so in this system of agriculture, for instance, you have farmers using technology based on ecological knowledge, as opposed to the industrial agriculture where the style of agriculture is somewhat dictated by, say, corporations or by people who are driven mostly by profit. So if we want to bring in the issues of GMOs, for instance, the crops are genetically modified for a particular reason, and they're given to farmers with directives on how to grow those crops. So, but in terms of agroecology, farmers are in control of what they produce and how that is produced. Farmers who over time have studied their ecosystem, they know and understand how it works. And so when they use technologies, for instance, they do that with the knowledge of the context that they are working in. So these are some of the principles that agroecology works with. Another one would be the efficient use of resources such as water and land, whereas industrial agriculture is fossil fuel based. Um, Agroecology is not as energy intensive as that.
I think this is really interesting, and I'll tell you particularly why. In all of these conversations about agriculture, food security, climate change, we tend to sort of dispute the relevance of indigenous knowledge. So we tend to
Yeah.
tell farmers like, hey, we found the solution, the industrialized solution for you guys. And
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, take it and just go and use it. But I see this is really interesting, such that it involves the farmers. It also puts into context the indigenous knowledge that work on the ground
Exactly.
and how it can be sustained, even improved upon. I think that's
Exactly.
that's a very that's a very unique approach to agroecology in all of this conversation. So the next question I want to ask you is slightly related to that, and it is basically you've talked about how this supports the natural environment, but how then does it support the human community? Because population is growing, we've got a lot of anthropogenic activities that tend to conflict with agricultural processes. So what's the balance here between agroecology and the pressure, man-made pressure on the land?
Okay, so I will link that back to the diversity of agroecosystems. Research has shown that, for instance, I don't know which particular hurricanes now, but some of these hurricane extreme weather events that happen, a study was carried out and it was shown that ecosystems or farms that were farmed agroecologically, farms that had that were high in diversity, so they were more able um, to withstand the impact of these extreme weather events than farms which were not um, based on agroecology methods. So the diversity, the biodiversity that agroecology increases helps ecosystems, help our communities to be more resilient to the impact of climate change. And like I said, excuse me, like I've said,
Sorry about that. Yeah.
agroecology, thank you. Agroecology puts the control of food systems in the hands of the farmers, in the hands of the community people, as opposed to other systems that puts that control in the hands of corporations. Agroecology encourages co-decision making between the producers and the consumers. And it also increases employment in the rural areas. Also, it ensures fair and short value chain. So, and some of the practices that agroecology comprises of also helps the farmers to have diversified income, and it reduces expenditure on synthetic or inorganic chemicals, which otherwise they would have to use on their farms.
Great. You've pretty much answered like the two other questions I had, but I will check with on the group and see if there are any questions from those who are joining us. This is Climate Wednesday, and we're discussing with Joyce, who is she coordinates the agroecology and food security um, arm of Health of Mother Earth Foundation. And OMF, yes. And the topic we're looking at today is agroecology as a pathway to sustainable, secure food systems. We've had a lot of conversations about how, a lot more pressure and that food availability is being threatened. And that's exactly what we're looking at. But while we wait, let's see if you can shed more light on food security. Does this could this be tied to issues of insecurity that we have right now? The northern part of Nigeria would be a very good case study at hand. And I mean, farmers are on the field and there are herdsman clashes. There's insecurity issues that is driving people off the farm. Does agroecology have any solution, or does it portend any advantage to addressing issues like this?
Well, I would say that the issues of
Did you get the
farmers
question?
and yeah, I got the question. Can you hear me?
Joyce, let me know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, yes, go on.
I can hear
Yes,
you. Yeah.
please.
So I would say those issues are issues that we have to, like, as a people, deal with head on. But what I would say is that agroecology connects to what we call food sovereignty, and not just food security, because um, there's an aspect of it that makes it more than what we have in terms of food security. And for food sovereignty, we are talking about access to food, and access by not just some people, but all people to food. And not just food, but food that is healthy, food that is nutritious. Because when we talk about food security, oftentimes the attention is more on having enough food, producing food in large quantities. But when it comes to agroecology and food sovereignty, we're talking about what the quality of food that is produced is, because it's the quality of food that we eat that determines if we're going to be healthy enough to be able to withstand or resist diseases such as the COVID-19 pandemic that we have. So when it comes to agroecology and food sovereignty, we're talking about food that is healthy, nutritious, and in addition to that, food that is culturally appropriate and produced in methods that are ecologically friendly. So then the third arm of what food sovereignty stands for is that it ensures that the power is in the hands of those who are actually responsible for producing the food. They have the control over what they produce and how it is produced. So for the farmers and herders issues, I think it's something we have to like structurally deal with. Then when it comes to impacts of climate change, because we know that people up north, uh, they feel the brunt more, even though even here in the north, in the south, we see the impact in terms of flooding. But I would say that on a general note or on a large scale, agroecology contributes to mitigation of climate change and helping our agroecosystems to be resilient to it. In that, the practices of agroecology actually contributes to trapping carbon in the soil. So studies, for instance, have shown that up to 40% of CO2 in the atmosphere can be trapped in the soil using agroecological methods. So in a large scale, agroecology contributes to solving the
40% of
climate crisis.
CO2. That's
Yeah,
huge.
yeah. So that's why there's actually a campaign that we are
Good.
working
I think
on.
that's some really huge statistics, and I just want to. Okay, sorry. Before you tell me about that campaign, I think that's a very important point, and I just want to stress it again that through agroecology, 40% of CO2 can be trapped. So, do you want to tell me about this campaign? I hope it's not hunger politics because that's a separate question that I have for you. Politics, we know politics in terms of governance. I know we've heard of climate politics and all that. So I am wondering, what exactly is hunger politics?
Okay, so it clearly says to us that there are concepts, there are ideas that are somewhat imposed. They are not necessarily true. So, for instance, you hear, oh, Africans are hungry, or Nigerians are hungry, or this or that percent of Africans go to bed hungry. But if you look at it critically, you will see that, of a truth, people don't go to bed hungry because enough food is not being produced. So there are structural factors, that make people go to bed hungry. Some people, or most people, go to bed hungry because they cannot afford the food. And we also know that a lot of food that is produced in Nigeria, for instance, is wasted because of lack of, say, storage or processing facilities, and because of the poor road networks that we have. So before food is transported from, say, the north down south, most of it gets bad. So the politics is in the fact that we are made to believe some things that are not true, just because a particular group of people or a
Mm,
particular person want to, sell an idea or take advantage of that idea. So they make us believe that, okay, this is the situation of things, so that we can buy into the idea that, they give us. Whereas we can actually, as a people, look inward, what are the challenges that we really have, and by ourselves, determine the solution to those challenges, instead of having some other person tell us what the problem is and tell us what the solution is. So that's what makes up the hunger politics. There's also the issue
mm,
of food aid, which we also know that most of the time there are hidden agenda, and it's not what it looks like, on the surface.
Great. We're coming to the close of this conversation, but you said you had a project and you wanted to talk to me about it.
Oh yeah, so it's a campaign for the inclusion of agroecology in Nigeria's climate change policies. Because of the importance of agroecology in climate mitigation, in climate resilience, we have working partners called the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. We've conducted a study of top policies in the climate arena in Nigeria. And the study has revealed that as important as agroecology is, there is no policy that directly captures agroecology. Some policies mention some elements of agroecology, but it is not recognized in its entirety as its importance for food sovereignty and for climate resilience. So we're actually on this campaign to make sure that a lot of people, including our farmers and policymakers, understand what agroecology is and how it's important, especially in this case for climate resilience. And the objective is to have agroecology integrated in our policies as one of the climate action that we take as a nation. So that's what the campaign is about in a nutshell. We'll be engaging a lot with I think Olumide was with us in a recent consultation meeting that we had on this particular project. So we'll be engaging a lot with farmers, with policymakers. We'll be engaging on the media space, for people to be aware that, okay, we are looking out for solutions to the climate crisis. Here is agroecology, a system of agriculture that will, in addition to ensuring that we have enough healthy food, also help in um, climate change, resilience to climate change impact.
Great, very important point you've made on this conversation. Thank you very much. Some of my strong takeaway from this is the need, and I agree with you and the campaign that there is a need for agroecology, as important as you've made us understand, to be a part of climate change response for the Nigerian government as a whole. And also the fact that agroecology should be considered, it should not be a conversation that we relegate behind, because 40% of CO2, we've had so much conversation about CO2 and how it's really, how we need to bring it down. Nigeria as a whole is trying to see that we can bring down 20% of our CO2 emissions conditionally, and then unconditionally that is 20%, and conditionally with some support we can bring down as much as 45% of our CO2. So if agroecology as a concept can help trap 40% of CO2 that is being emitted, it's not a validation for people to continue emitting, but it's also a stamp on the fact that agroecology should be spotlighted. Ngozi Peace has a question here. She's saying, what is the significance between agroecology and climate smart agriculture? I don't know if she means difference or significance. What is this? Oh, sorry. What is the significant difference between agroecology and climate smart agriculture? What's your response to that, Joyce?
Okay, so I will start with saying that sometimes concepts can be misleading, and so we have to carefully interrogate all concepts. So climate smart agriculture, looking at it, is a very nice concept, and you think, okay, this works with nature. This would help us deal with the challenges of climate change. But there are some people who would push that concept, and at the same time push concepts that go against what the principles of agroecology stands for. So, for instance, some people push the concept of climate smart agriculture, but at the same time push the use of, or the intensive use of, synthetic chemicals or synthetic fertilizers and all. So climate smart agriculture can be depending on how it is taken up, can be input intensive, whereas agroecology is a broader term that not just focus does not just focus on the practice of agroecology itself. It looks at the science that brings innovations as to how to respond to common challenges in agriculture, and also looks at the social aspect of it that has to do with the rights of farmers, the rights of the community people to determine what they grow and how they grow. And an important difference is that agroecology focuses on promoting soil health. So, for instance, we know that the health of soil is directly linked to the quantity or quality of microorganisms that are contained in that particular soil. So, while synthetic fertilizers or inorganic inputs destroy the microbial population in the soil, agroecology ensures that the microbial content of the soil is protected or even increased. So that's what ensures the health of the soil. So for agroecology, we can say climate smart agriculture if it is really climate smart, and if it puts control in the hands of farmers, we can say that can come in as an aspect of agroecology.
Great, and that clearly answers the second part of the question, which reads, which is more sustainable if you take into consideration the interest of smallholder farmers? So I think
Of
that
course,
clearly answers the question that first, there are significant differences, and of course, it will be agroecology that is a lot more favorable to smallholder farmers.
yeah.
Pretty much that will be how much we can take. It's 4 minutes before our downtime. Really sorry that we couldn't start at the right time. We had problems with the connection, but we're excited that at least we've been able to have a very meaningful conversation with Joyce from the Health of Motherhood Foundation. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Maybe one last question before you go. What are your recommendations towards improving more agroecological practice to strengthen Nigerian food system? I know you've mentioned about trying to push it into the climate change policy, but do you have other specific recommendations that could improve agroecological practices in Nigeria?
Okay, so I think I would mention two. One would be that we should focus on or invest in more research on agroecology, um, especially as it relates to food sovereignty and also as it relates to climate change resilience. So it would really be helpful if our scientists can take it up to research more on agroecology, and if the government can support researches like that. And then also, it would be really helpful if we take a stand against GMOs, against the infiltration of GMOs, because if we are supporting agroecology on one hand, and on the other hand, we open doors to the infiltration of GMOs, we will be running in a circle. So GMOs actually go against all that agroecology stands for. So for us to improve our practices in agroecology and to be able to get the advantages that it holds, we have to take a stand against GMOs. Because if I should speak a little bit more on GMOs, it is
Joyce, I think the connection is failing. I cannot hear you. We'll just wait a few more seconds and see that Joy comes back in. But we're rounding off. It's been a very meaningful conversation with Joyce Ebibe Ine. Forgive me if I missed that again. Joyce Ebibe Inwe. And we've been talking about agroecology
the
as a pathway to towards sustainable food systems, particularly in Nigeria. And some of what we've been talking about is pretty much the definition, the concept of agroecology, the principles of agroecology, how this is tied to sustainable agriculture. We just took a question from Ngozi piece where we talked about the significant difference between agroecology and climate smart agriculture. Joyce has also shared with us her thoughts about how agroecology supports the human community, looking at the pressure from population, from anthropogenic activities. And then lastly, she talked about some of the very um, recommendations that we can put forward to the Nigerian government. Someone is just writing to say, and I mean it's a little bit comical, but he's saying in a place where people are hungry, should they care about the quality of the food or the quantity of the food? And this is what it means. I mean, if people are really hungry, will they really care about how much food we have or the quality of even the little food that we have? And maybe that could be your pattern shot, Joyce. I see your back. Uh, in a place where people are hungry, where people really, I mean, there is real hunger, not hunger politics now. In a place where there is real hunger in the land, would people care
Mhm.
about the quality of the food or the quantity of the food?
Well, maybe I would maybe I would answer that with a question. Would you rather
Okay,
pick up and have food that is healthy and you live for say 30, 40, 50 more years, or you take what you find now and live for just 1 year after? So that's the question, and it's something we
very
have to
strong
we
points to
have to
ponder about.
yeah, we have to deeply think about it, because I mean, even if we eat today and live for a few more years, how about the children that we leave behind? How about our environment? Because you have food that you eat today, and in the process of producing that food, you totally destroy the environment. What happens tomorrow? What happens 10 years, 11, 15 years down the line? So it's not just about finding food to quench hunger this minute. We have to think, you know, critically about tomorrow. So, in as much as you may take the food and eat it today, just to be alive and have enough energy to think, we must not stop thinking, and we must, take urgent action to ensure that we get it right with our food system. Because, I mean, food is life and food is the future.
Mm, great. Food is life, food is is the future. We must take urgent action and also think about the coming generation. Thank you so much. Thank you indeed, Joyce. Teach me how to
Thank
pronounce your
you.
surname again, just before I round off.
Ebebewe.
Ebibenwe. Thank you so much, Joyce Ebibenwe, for coming on this edition of the Climate Wednesday. We really appreciate all the thoughts that you've shared with us, and great job you do with Health of Mother Earth Foundation. Say me well to Dr. Mumbasi and the entire team. Really appreciate the very important work that you're doing. I want to say thank you to Olumide Idowu and members of the International Climate Change Development Initiative for making this possible. This will still be on our YouTube channels, on Facebook, on Twitter also, so you could always go back to check. If you have questions, feel free to write the questions. Joyce is also on Twitter. Our organization is EcoOMF on Twitter, so you could check that out. Tweet if you have questions. And Joyce is also on Twitter. Handle is Joyce Ogene. Joyce underscore Ogene. I hope I did not murder
No,
that.
you didn't. You did.
Okay. Yeah, you know. My name is Sheifumi Adebote, and it's been a pleasure. Have yourself a wonderful time, everyone. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you, Shay.
Yes, my pleasure. Absolutely.